Welcome everybody. Great to have you back at the Bright Insight Digital Health C-Suite series. Today we have Zoe Philippides, who's Chief Privacy Officer at Amgen. Zoe, really excited to have you join us. Would love to have you start by telling us where you're zooming in from today.
Thanks, Cal. I'm really excited to be here. I'm in Camarillo, California, just about 10 minutes away from Amgen.
Great. Zoe, tell us before we jump into the meat of the privacy conversation we'll have today, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be Chief Privacy Officer at Amgen.
Well, it started about 15 years ago when I came on board at Amgen in their litigation group. So I have spent about half of my career at Amgen in the law department, moved over to compliance and into the privacy role, and took on the chief privacy role in 2015.
Is it safe to say that the trends are moving towards more restrictions and a more challenging environment for companies? Or would you say the opposite, which is that the specificity that's coming from law and governing bodies is actually making it simpler because now companies know what they can and can't do? How should folks think about that?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think the laws are definitely becoming more complex and one would seem more restrictive. It's also, you will hear a lot of privacy folks talking about creating privacy laws while looking in the rearview mirror. And what they mean by that is a lot of times the privacy laws were written for a time that we're not in today, which is the technology is much more advanced. Patients, people, individuals, much more sophisticated around what the value of data is, what they want to be done, or how they want to manage their own data when they share it with companies. And so all of these pieces have made it a very complex and challenging way. And then you layer on top of that more and more restrictive laws written thinking about companies and things from almost like borders. So you think about privacy laws, there's a lot of complexity, and the change happens when you cross a border. The internet doesn't operate that way. We don't operate that way as global companies. And so it becomes a very highly challenging space as a result of that. And so how do you operate in that space where, to do so compliantly?
One of the powers of digital health that we're really seeing across our customer base is this concept of personalization, right? Whether that's really personalizing the diagnosis, it's personalizing the appropriate treatments, personalizing adherence, or even personalizing dosing. And I use that word personalized across every aspect of that description, because you can imagine personalization is really going to come with a lot of data and a lot of specific data about that person. What role do you or recommendation would you give to digital health companies, pharmaceutical and medical device companies that are moving to the space on how do you communicate the value and really achieve the trust of the patient so that they're willing to sign up for something that can have this really personal clinical impact for them?
Yeah, I think that's such a wise and impactful question from a standpoint of just being thoughtful enough to ask it, and how do you address that personalization piece. And one of the pieces of advice I would give is include your privacy person early on in the discussion. And the reason I would say, while it might sound self-serving as I'm sitting here talking to you as a privacy person, it's really not, from a standpoint of privacy has the ability to be a strategic enabler for an organization and help co-create the technology, the process, the whatever it is that you're looking to gain. So privacy can help be there at the beginning to help build and iterate. It's done in the right way, mindful of those privacy principles, mindful of the patient understanding or the individual understanding how the information is going to be used, so that things are done in the right way, compliant with the laws, and then to ensure that you enable the speed of building. Because if you wait till the very end to ask the privacy person, hey, is this okay? If there's something that needs changing in that process, it slows everything down. And the person that is, impacted the most at the end, not just the business, but it's the patient. They don't have the speed to to access something in the right way at the right time. And so by including the privacy person at the beginning, it really, I think, helps move the process along, not just so much faster, but more efficiently and more thoughtfully.
So let me ask you a question around something we often talk to on the regulatory side about, which is this concept of future proofing, right? Which we speak a lot about the fact that what your intended use might be in an early release of your product may change over time, and you may move in from non-regulated to regulated intended uses, or maybe a class 1 intended use to a class 3 intended use as your ability to personalize or have a clinical impact improves. Is there, and hence as a result of that, we recommend our customers really think about an approach that future proofs to higher and higher levels of regulatory requirements vis-a-vis a higher level of risk. Is there a similar concept on the privacy side? Do you advise your teams that you're working with to think about not just what data they want to collect today and what they want to do with that data today, but sort of take an approach that gives them flexibility over time to meet perhaps different types of objectives?
Yeah, it's a challenging question for us because when you think fundamentally about the data that we have and that's been entrusted to us, the consent piece comes with, if it's identifiable data, the consent piece comes with an understanding of what the data is being used for. So it almost makes it, I don't want to say impossible, but it makes it very hard to use it for some future use that you haven't thought, right? There's that tension between how can you consent if you haven't even thought of what the future use is. Now, it's obviously, there are different requirements around data that's been de-identified or that you can't trace to a single individual.
Makes a lot of sense. When you're talking to your peers across the pharma and medtech industry, what are 2 or 3 key themes that are on their minds that's keeping all of you guys collectively up at night?
Yeah, so when I talk to folks across the industry, the things keeping us up at night are sort of the evolution of laws around the globe and how fast they're proliferating. And the differences, right? You have laws coming into countries that have never before had privacy laws, and how do you put in the right process and the right training? You also see sort of with what we saw in the summer with Schrems coming down and the abolition or the removal of the privacy shield, you see almost a protectionist theme around data and sort of a closed in and non-movement of data. And for an industry where data and sharing and knowledge about that is sort of the crux of how do we get to the right place for patients, it's a little bit concerning, and one that we think about. We think about the data moving from Europe to the US and back. It's sort of that, is there going to be a restriction of movement that will impact not just global companies, but global citizens?
One last question for you, coming to the topic of COVID. Have you seen or do you expect any of the impacts that COVID has had on laws, as an example, in some ways, loosening of, if you will, or relaxing of some of the privacy requirements? Do you see that as temporary? Do you see that as, maybe having an impact of, in the opposite direction of what you're saying, of potentially letting people see the value of easing and not being overly restrictive?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think that we're going to see an impact from the pandemic for lots of time to come, in the sense it's a new way of working and a new way to do business. It'll be interesting because I think consumers, patients will really dictate if that way sticks. There are certainly, we are seeing groups of folks that prefer to have the video chat with their doctor rather than going into the doctor's office. Will that change? I'm not sure that the pandemic, I think the pandemic accelerated certain activities and behaviors. It'll be interesting to see if it reverts back. I tend to think it won't. It's a pendulum swing, right? I mean, you went one way and now you're coming the other. That's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. But it is important to kind of keep that in mind. And the other thing that has been heartening to me and that I've enjoyed is the sort of all hands on deck with all of pharma getting together to try to find the right thing. And so you see, a very competitive industry that, obviously still competitive, but trying to work together to help this global world.
With COVID, we've seen a relaxing of some of the privacy laws, particularly around HIPAA. Is that something that you believe is going to be temporary, or do you see that as maybe having more of a lasting impact?
Yeah, I mean, so we haven't felt the relaxing of the privacy laws at HIPAA or around HIPAA. I'm not sure that I see a relaxing of any laws coming, or and it's not something that I would rely on. It's more, I think we have seen less enforcement activity than I would have expected, but I imagine that will heat up again as we get through some of the numbers rising and some of the other pandemic pieces. So I think it's, from my perspective, it's not that there's a relaxing, it's just that there's a less of a focus perhaps, or a less visibility to enforcement activities, but I imagine that will change.
Thanks, Zoe, for making the time to join us today.
Thank you, Kal. It's always great to see you.